Hey everyone. So last time when we ended class, we had to end a little early, and I promised that we would get back to this code. Remember, this is the code, the machine learning landscape, and we had our own copy of that, if you remember. And we were going through and making sure it all worked, and making some changes to it and trying to understand the code a little better. All right, so let's just take a look at the code again here. And so if you see, this is kind of where we were. We had just looked at you made this plot here, right? And we had made the model. So remember what I was telling you, that this model here is just a name for this particular model from the sklearn toolkit, sklearn.linear model, and from linear models, choose linear regression. And so that just says, hey, I want to do linear regression. That's really all it says. And now remember, this model has lots of sub methods that can be used, right? So one of them is to fit, right? We had our X data, we have our Y data, and the X data was the GDP per capita, and the Y data was the life satisfaction index. And we're telling it, hey, do the fit now. And then what I did next was and so I hope that you get to this point that your code runs. What I did next was I just printed X out because I just wanted to see what it looked like, right? You can see that it's this multi-dimensional array that has a certain number of rows and one column, right? And then I also printed the shape. So if we scroll down, we can see the shape. And let me see if I can do this without writing. Hold on. It's very annoying. Okay, give me a second here. Let's scroll down. And you can see the shape here, 29 rows, one column, right? So that's what that output was. Let's scroll back up, and I got to get rid of all my... Yeah, I love Zoom sometimes. Okay. Clear the drawings. All right, and we go back to draw. Okay. All right, so I printed x.shape. I also started doing things like looking at the coefficients that it outputs. Now, what do the coefficients mean? That means the slope and the intercept, which is what you would expect from a linear regression, right? Especially a linear regression, we only have one x, right? One column of x's. And in this week's work, you're going to see a situation in which you have two columns of x's, okay? But if you only have one, so that's kind of like y equals mx plus b, right? So y equals slope times x plus the intercept. And so these coefficients will tell you what it found. Now, the funny thing about linear regression here with only one x is that it's only going to find one coefficient. And so what I did is I said, here, I want it to print out for me what the slope is, right? So I said, hey, print the slope for the model is, and then make it a string, the model.coefficient, because the only thing that's going to be stored in coefficient is the slope, because it knows that you can just use the predict function, right, that we've seen before, to predict where the intercept is, right? That's when x is equal to 0. Okay, so, all right, so first of all, we have print here, and I'm printing out the slope. So again, I have to get off here and just scroll down to show you. So the slope for the model is, and then it's still an array, so it said 4.9 times 10 to the minus 5, okay? And you see that in your book, right? In your book, they tell you what the slope is. And then I want to know what the intercept is. So to do that, I'm gonna, now this is a little bit out of order because you're in your book, they do a prediction for the GDP per capita of Cyprus, right? So I'm not going to do that right this second. I kind of didn't even use that. I want to know what the intercept is. So the intercept is model.predict when x is 0. And in fact, this notation here is a little funky, that you may not have seen before, but you should kind of know how this works because we were looking at arrays before. So let's just unpack this line here. Okay, so model.predict sorry, this pen looks really, really badly when it's using Zoom's thing. Model.predict is a method that comes with model, right? So predict is the method that comes with model. So once you've made your model, and then inside you pass it something like, you could pass it any x, right? X has to be an array. So this is why it has two things here. So for instance, when in your book they wanted to pass in the GDP per capita of Cyprus, they had to put it in these two little array brackets to make it that an array that has one row and one column according to Python, right? So inside here, inside the parentheses, you would put an array, and it could be multiple arrays, right? I mean, sorry, multiple x's. So you put whatever number you want in here in two brackets, right? And what it'll return is it'll say, okay, well, my model looks like this. My model says y is equal to the slope times x plus b, okay? And it'll say, oh, you want this x, whatever this is in here? Okay, I'll put it in here. I'll multiply it by the slope. I'll add the intercept, and I'll give you back y. Okay. All right, so that's what they did here when they used this, and I just deleted that code. And the code that you have, because you haven't gotten to this and messed around with it as much as I have, you'll still have something that says model.predict, and it'll have x new in there, right? And you'll get the prediction for Cyprus's life satisfaction. Okay, but I'm just showing you here how to get the intercept, because it's not something that comes back in the coefficient in this thing. So in model.coef doesn't come, it only gives you the slope, it doesn't give you the intercept, because it knows you can predict the intercept by putting a 0 in for the number. So that's what I'm doing here. So if we look here, model.predict, and I put the number 0. Of course, I have those two square brackets in because it needs that, that two-dimensional array. In this case, 0 is the only thing in that array, but it's still two-dimensional because it has one row and one column. Okay, now what is this? Well, this is just an indexing into that array, okay? So model.predict is going to give us back an array, right? So in other words, if I go down here, you're not going to see, oh, sorry, I have to get the mouse back, all right? So if I go down, all right, you're going to see, well, we're gonna do that in a second, but here, this 4.85 is the intercept, okay? And I'm not gonna get rid of all this. I'm going to, there we go, put it back. So that 4.95 or whatever that was, 4.85, I can't remember what I just saw, okay, was the intercept. And so that's what will return out of this when you put model.predict with a 0 in there. Now, this here is indexing into the array. So if you remember, if you have an array, like a NumPy array, so for instance, let's say we have a NumPy array called R, and it looks like this, np.array, and then it looks like this, like 1, 2, 3. Okay. So this is a one-dimensional array, and if you look at the length of this or the size of this, you will see it would say 3, right? It would be like 3, comma nothing, right? If I put instead of this, if I put two brackets, now it's going to have, right? It's going to have 3, 1. Okay. Anyway, so when we want to get the first value to return, we have to call it like this. We say, oh, the first value is at index 0. It's the first thing in the first row and the first thing in the first column. And this would be 1. And then our, 0, sorry, let me back that up a little bit. Let me see if I can erase. Nope, never mind, I'm not going to erase. No, let's just do this. So R of the first row, I'm sorry, the second row, because it starts at 0. So this is index 0, index 1, index 2, etc. So this would be 1, 0 would be 2. Okay. All right. So this thing here says give me the first thing, the thing in the first row and the first column. And so that means that the intercept, right, will be just the number, not an array. So we'll no longer be an array because I just took the number out and assigned it somewhere. Okay. So in other words, I could do something like that with this. I could be say, I could say my new num, or whatever I want to call it, is equal to r of 0, 0. And if I wanted to print new num, right? So print new num, I would get a return of 1. It would just print 1. It wouldn't have those funny brackets around it. It would just have 1. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm saying, hey, I just want to return the number. I don't want the brackets around it. Same thing here. I'm doing it just to get the slope, even though I had that up here. I just want the slope. I want the number by itself. I don't want the little brackets around it. I don't want it to be an array. I just want it to be a number. And here I'm printing these two things. And as you see, when we look down, they just printed without those brackets, right? They are just numbers, not arrays anymore. And that was right here. Notice the difference here. When I said the slope of the model is this, it still has the brackets around it because I didn't, bother to take that number out of the array and just have it be a number. So that's what these two things is. Okay. Sorry, these two things are. All right, so let's look back up and see what else we have up here. I'll put this back. There we go. All right. So the next thing is, I printed this out nice. I said, hey, the prediction for sinus GDP per capita is that I'm concatenating the strings with the plus, right, operator, remember. And then I said, make it into a string, predict, model.predict x new, right? Okay. And I printed out other things. All right, so if you look down, you can see that. So you could add all this, mess with it, right? Whatever you like to do. Now, the one thing I do want you to make sure that you do is the next couple of lines. Okay, so the next couple of lines, and I'm going to stop drawing for a second here, and I'm going to erase all my drawings. And I'm going to go back to the mouse and get rid of this. And I'm going to show you in here in code. So what I'm going to do here is I've got to go up and rerun all my code because I just opened this and I can't rerun anything. So let me go ahead and rerun it all. Remember to do that every time you open your code back up, because otherwise you're going to get a lot of errors. And here I've got to load up the data again. It's kind of annoying that I have to do that, but it's not the end of the world. So I'm going to go over here, come to my DSCI, come to my data sets, live set, and load these two guys up again. And I got to remember to sit and wait until they're actually uploaded. Okay, good. We're uploaded both 100%. Keep going. Keep going. I'm going to run this whole thing. All right, now, I have a lot of code in this one block. I don't recommend it, by the way. If I were you, I'd split stuff up so that you don't have to run everything all at once. And what I'm actually going to do is sort of comment out some of the unnecessary things that we were just using. Whoops, wrong place. So I don't need to print out X. I don't need to print all that stuff. I don't need to print this. I can keep that. And then I'm not going to print the slope. I'm not going to print this. I'm not going to print this. I'm not going to print that. This just will make it a little nicer. I'm also even not going to have the plot, the original plot here. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to rerun. And that should just give me the stuff I want to show you. So all that stuff I wasn't even using. Well, I'm not going to use now. So what I'm doing now does not depend on it. Okay, so here's the important bit. I am going to use matplotlib and show you a different way of plotting that certainly for some of you, or one of you I know for sure, it'll be much more familiar because it'll be a whole lot like MATLAB. Okay, so I'm going to go back up here and show you that matplotlib.pyplot was put in as PLT, right? Okay, just FYI. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to show you how to plot stuff. But first, I want to actually make a line that I can plot on the data. Okay, so I'd like to see the fit line itself, right? I know that fit and it gave me a slope and an intercept, but I want to see it. right? Plotted on the plot with the data. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm making, right? Now, I already have the intercept here and I have the slope as numbers, not arrays. This won't work if you have them as arrays. And I'm saying, hey, make a new array, yp for yPredict, that's the intercept, right? Plus the slope times a for all a's in my original x, okay? So that's just gonna give me a bunch of y's according to the line that the regression returned, right? It returned a slope and an intercept, and I'm using the intercept and the slope to just make a bunch of points on that line. And then I'm going to have the matplotlib just plot all the points kind of strung together in a dotted line. All right, so let's see. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to plot the data itself. And here you can see plt.plot. So plot is the method. And then it's plotting x and y. So those are data. And I'm telling it, plot them in green pluses. Okay. And so there it is. You can see the green pluses, right? And then if I make another call to plot right after that, right, it's going to plot it on the same graph. And I'm saying, hey, I want you to plot my line with x values x and yp values here in red dotted lines. I mean, right? So a red dotted line, no points, just red dotted line. And here's what you get. Okay, so I encourage you to make all this happen, and again, you can see some of this I'm just printing stuff out. You don't have to do that, but I would like you to be able to make a plot like this, change the colors a little bit. So if you look up the colors in MATLAB for plots, it'll tell you the code, but it's pretty self-explanatory most of the time. So for instance, there's B for blue and R for red and G for green and Y for yellow and B and K actually for black, which is a little weird, right? But you can look up MATLAB, so it's MATLAB, color codes for plots, and you'll see all the different color codes. There's like M for magenta and C for cyan, and there's not a huge number of them, but there's some, and you can sort of mess around with that. So I'd like you to get all this code running, like we were working on your own version, and please share it with me when you're all done, and make a pretty plot. Change the colors up a little. Okay. You can also change the pluses. So you can put, if I put G star, star, it would have been stars. And there's all kinds of other things you can do. Like look that up too. These are called markers, plot markers. So I want you to make your original plot with the different colors and different markers for full credit. And please share it with me when you're done. Okay.